times in his rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York, so you never leave. Strap my lungs, then we puffin' through with that right. But giving them some stories, they come back like manic this, manic that, while you crawling to me. The hell we.
Okay guys, and welcome back. So today we're going to be going over a video that I know a lot of people are searching for, and there's a lot of YouTubers that don't understand this engine. So today we're going to be going over the N43 reliability video. Now, if a lot of you don't know, the N43 is found in all the 2-litre engines. We get that engine in the UK, the EU. It's also supplied in Trinidad, in Japan, and a few other countries around the world as well. The engine is not found in the USA. It's a 2-litre engine, highly controlled emission engine, and it's found here in the UK, and we do get it in some of the cars here. So therefore I do understand it. Alongside the N46 and the N42, the N43 replaced it. The N43 runs the same way as the N53 does. So we're going to go over all the parts that does fail on this engine. So the first one on the N43 will be the injectors up here. Now these injectors are direct injection injectors. Now many of you guys know, if you've got an N43 engine, you'll suffer a very bad vibration, and when that vibration comes, it's usually to do with the injectors because they're not fueling the engine enough. So then what ends up happening is you get a nasty vibration coming through the interior cabin. I know a lot of people out there with the N43 end up with this problem, and it ends up causing them major cost as well, because the injectors are not cheap, and they're also plagued in issues. A lot of people go around replacing ignition coils, which we're going to come on to that, and things like that. They're not knowing that the injectors are really at fault. The next one on these guys is the knock sensor. Now, as many of you guys know, the knock sensor is fitted on the N43 along with the N53 as well. It wasn't fitted on the N54, even though they all use the same parts. The knock sensor is to control the nitrogen oxide coming out the exhaust. Yes, I know petrol doesn't pollute that much, but they fitted it. And the main reason for that is because they thought years ago, when diesel was more cleaner, that petrol was the one polluting the site, and that's why they fitted it to all these older cars, and they were making diesels better. Who's to know, in 2020, they only found out that diesel's polluting more, and they're putting them kind of sensors on the diesels, on the DPF, and to doing away with them on the petrols, because the petrol's not the one to blame for the pollution in the countries. But the NOx sensor is responsible for monitoring the amount of nitrogen oxide. It also works in turn with the lambda sensors as well, and it also works in turn with all the fueling and the air mixture as well, and it reads that and manages to break it down, especially on stop start, because many of you guys will realise as well, on your N43 you'll have a stop start button as well, which will auto stop start to cut the engine out. And that's another thing on them that you have to be aware of. A lot of the newer cars with the N43 engine, especially the E90s, will have that stop start feature integrated in them, and that's why the NOx sensor ends up going out. Because of the stop start, it ends up knackering out the NOx sensor. The NOx sensor is not cheap. It runs about £350, and it is a common problem, and you will end up with misfire codes. Your car might not even run great as well when that goes out, because the NOx sensor is responsible for managing the nitrogen oxide coming out the exhaust. It also works in turn with the lambda sensors. You can get misfires from that as well. The N43 is a complicated engine. It has a lot of sensors on it, so you guys have to be aware of that. Then make sure you check all these things, and the best thing I can advise you is to use ISTA. And if you guys do need it, it's something I provide as well, which I can provide. Obviously it's not free, so before anyone messages me thinking I'm going to provide it free, it's not free at all. So if you do want it, it's the best thing to diagnose that car, because the N43 is very complicated, especially having a NOx sensor as well as the injectors. You don't want to be throwing money at things it might not be. The next one on them guys is the timing chain. Now the timing chain on them are prone to failure, the same as the N47. All the 2-litre engines are prone to failure. These are notorious for breaking the timing chain, and everyone goes and replaces the tension, and it doesn't do any justice. What is on them is the guides that we use on the N47 as well as the N57. The timing chain guides on them end up snapping and derailing the whole engine, and it ends up causing catastrophic failure on the engine. The best thing to do is, when you start hearing a rattle, is to replace the tension and replace all the guides as well on the N43 engine to stop that happening, because what ends up happening is your chain stretches, you lose power, then your revs are jumping all over the place on the counter when you're trying to floor it and you notice it. Then it feels like there's no power. That's because the chain has got slack, and the chain ain't tight anymore, ain't been held tight, so you're not getting the power because it's not turning the cogs at full maximum speed, which is on the camshafts itself. So you therefore end up with a lot of other issues as well, and also you can end up knackering your injectors as well as your ignition coils, and also damage your spark plugs as well as the cylinders, because the car's not running right. And as you guys know, the N43 is a direct injection engine. You have to be very careful if the timing chain is failing to make sure you get that replaced. Same as on the N47, it's a common failure. BMW never rectified it. They did upgrade the part, which is the guide, so I'll make sure to go and change your guides on that as well. So another thing guys will be the oil strainer as well, which is found on the N43. Now when the chain guides break and they go into the oil pan, What ends up happening, they end up blocking the oil strainer, which then end up starving the engine of oil because it blocks the little tube that the oil's meant to be pulled through to get back to the engine. So that ends up getting clogged, which can end up causing you catastrophic failure as well. So what ends up happening is if your chain guide does break and your engine's still running fine, then you replace it. If you don't clear out the sump and the chain guide's left in there, it will block the oil tube, which ends up pulling the oil up to the engine, which will cause oil starvation and your engine to blow up because the oil didn't get to it, so you end up with a new engine again. So do make sure, if you are planning to change the timing chain, make sure to take your sump down and make sure no chain guides have got into the bottom of it, because it can be detrimental for your car and it can end up destroying your whole engine. So be aware of that. Like I say, it's something nobody wants to see, something nobody wants, because it can leave you without a car as well. So do make sure that you get that replaced and make sure you do everything needed. If the chain guides do go, to make sure you clean it out, make sure there's no bits left in the engine internally that is going to cause your oil to be blocked up or your car to end up failing as well. The next one on these guys is the ignition coils. As you guys know, the N43 ignition coils get very, very hot from being a direct injection engine. Now, what ends up happening is once they get hot, they end up going a lot, and a lot of people don't realize this as well. A lot of people jump to injectors, a lot of people jump to ignition coils, and nobody can get their head around what's actually happening with that car. Now, this is why I said to you the best advice you can use is ISTA, because ISTA will find exactly what's going on for you, whether it be an injector, whether it be an ignition coil. But your ignition coils, they are used a lot on the N43 and they do fail a lot. Same with the spark plugs. I would recommend that if you are replacing the ignition coil, don't just replace one, replace all 6. And now if this is happening after 100k, you just got to benefit the fact that it's last 100k, they're going to need changing at some point in time. I would recommend using all 6. Don't use Chinese ones. And I would also recommend that you change the spark plugs as well on the N43 engine, because it's notorious for failure. And if that ignition coil has failed, it would have made the spark plug work harder, which therefore it would have been carboned up, that when you go to start the car, it's still going to feel like it's misfiring. So I therefore recommend doing that. I also recommend that if you take the spark plugs out, make sure they ain't got oil on it. If you've got oil in it, that's a known fact that you've got oil getting into combustion chamber, which then means you need to sort out the other internal issues. Another thing I want to go over with you on the N43 engine, guys, is the long service intervals and using the wrong oil. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is these engines are designed to run on 5W30. Now, I know the manufacturer do recommend to run on 5W40. I would highly, highly not recommend that. And also, doing long intervals like changing your oil every 10,000 miles should not be done, and I recommend not to do that. I recommend to change your oil every 5,000 to 7,000 miles on this car to be on the safe side. This is key to keeping your chain lubricated properly, and also the guide. This is what a lot of people ain't realizing is in hot climates with the N43 engine, they're running their cars. You've got to remember, oil disintegrates, it ends up breaking down. With the heat of the engine and also the heat of the outside, it's very, very crucial that the oil is properly thick and also lubricates the chain and also gets up to temperature very quickly. Now, using a thicker weight oil or a thinner weight oil ain't gonna do it justice. My best advice is to use 5W30 on this car. That's what BMW recommend, and it will give the best service for your car. Now, like I say, what's going on with these engines, a lot of them are having big failures, and that's due to because people are using the wrong oil. This engine was only produced in like the UK, EU and other countries, and not America, due to the high sulfur in the fuel. So this is the main reason it was never put out in America. It does relate to the 116 knife, to the 320. It was bought out in 2007, this engine, so be aware of that. That most people will have it from 2009. They all come with auto stop start, which is another thing we're going to get onto, is the starter motor. Now, many of you with the N43 engine, if you have got the auto start stop, I recommend coding it out or turning it off, because that can end up wearing down your starter motor and end up leading to another starter motor. Now, most of you know, if you're in a hot climate, the starter motor will wear out and it will put more wear and tear on the starter motor itself. These cars are notorious for starter motors going out, and it's not something many people want to be spending out on, is a new starter motor. So I recommend to code it out and get rid of the auto start stop feature. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys, and if you are just finding me now for the N43 engine, thank you very much for finding this video. If you ain't subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe. Please like the video, and please also just comment if you've got any issues with the N43 engine. I do understand the N43 engine because we get it here in the UK, as I said. A lot of people who do YouTube are mostly Americans, so they don't understand the N43 engine, but I've got very, very good knowledge with this engine regarding that. I've had this engine myself, so I do understand it very well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and we've got a lot more videos to come regarding the reliability of other engines. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.